All the plants in this garden are dwarf plants. Most shrubs want to be between 4 to 6 feet on average. That's just how big they like to be, but oftentimes we give them spaces to grow that are a lot smaller than that, and then you have to hedge them and they get really tight and cramped up, and it's not ideal. So in this yard in particular, I knew we were starting out with a smaller space in general, but she loved a lot of plants, and so what we ended up doing is just going dwarf for all of the plants in this yard. So I want to walk you through a few options and why that might make sense for your yard depending on the space that you're fitting. But oftentimes I see landscapes that have like an 18-inch planter or a 2-foot planter, and 2 foot is the smallest I like to see unless you're doing something like a snake plant or something that is really narrow. And even at that, I still like more growing space because those small planters dry out quickly. All right, so I'm gonna start with the plant I'm most excited about, and this is this lavender. Actually, let me find one that has flowers on it. So most people are familiar with Spanish lavender because it's one of the most popular plants you'll see. It grows really well, it tolerates a lot. It's a Mediterranean plant, but this is a hybrid, and this one in particular is called Anouk Deluxe. And there's a few of them, but what I really love about this plant is it only gets 14 inches tall. So adorable. It's like a little chocolate drop in the yard. So it gets about this tall and about 18 inches wide at most. So what I did is I went ahead and measured out, spaced all of these evenly. They're 2 foot on center, and then I spaced them out 14 to the front of the bucket. So that way when these grow out, I'm expecting them to be roughly about here, and they're little accents in the yard. So lavenders typically, in fact, there was a lavender in this yard in the corner over there that was monstrous. It was huge. It was probably like 6 feet tall. It was sheared because it was growing into the sidewalk. So if you just get the standard lavender, you're probably gonna get a 6-foot shrub. So you wanna pay attention to what variety. Now there's a few of these smaller ones. I'll go ahead and list a few here. They're in this 14-inch tall because they're just so adorable. So highly recommend a dwarf lavender if you're in a smaller yard so you can fit more plants and have more variety. Now this plant here, this is a Westringia. It's also called like a false rosemary. It looks very much like a rosemary. It has very similar flowers. It's not, it's different, but it's a really cool plant. So Westringias oftentimes are 4 to 6 feet as well. And if you can imagine, I'm about 5'5", about like this big for this whole shrub. And if I have a few of them, you just have one giant bush. And that kind of is uninteresting. So this is Westringia Grey Box. That's it. It's Grey Box. This is Westringia Grey Box, and it's a smaller version of the normal Westringia that again is the 4 to 6 foot. This is going to get 2 to 3 feet, and we're going to make sure that we prune these in a way that they stay kind of small, but they also keep a really nice form. You can see the foliage is quite dense. The flowers are beautiful and simple. Now, these guys back here, these are Pittosporum Golf Ball. And what I love about these plants is they naturally grow to about a 3-foot round mound. And so they make great little accents without having to like hedge them into circles. They're already kind of gonna grow that way. You can make it more dramatic and make them perfect spheres, but naturally these are just gonna be nice round balls, and these are going to be kind of the backdrop. Everything's small in this yard right now, but I expect these to be our tallest plant. Then we'll keep those just a hair smaller. I expect those to naturally grow about 1/2 foot smaller, but you know, that's what we expect. But sometimes things change in the landscape. Now, I did fib. Not all the plants are dwarf. This Senecio here, this is just already a small plant. So this is a nice little succulent, and these are gonna fill in 100% in this area, giving this nice big blue block around our dwarf olive. So this dwarf olive is really cool. In fact, I didn't even know about it. My client found it when I sent her the website to the nursery when we were looking at things, and she actually found this tree, and it's called Skylark. And this is a dwarf olive. Now, most people are familiar with Little Ollie, which is a dwarf olive that gets about this tall, makes a great sphere as well, or a great mini olive tree. You could prune it up and have open branching, and it's super beautiful. But this guy will get about 12 feet tall, which is the perfect height to not block the solar panels, but still have like a true accent tree, where if we had the Little Ollie, it's almost maxed. This would be as big as that's gonna get, but this is gonna get a little taller, making it look more like a tree than a shrub. All right, next, let's talk about our bush rangers. So these guys here, these are Antigoxanthus bush rangers. So this is red. Now, typically our kangaroo paws are gonna get pretty tall with their flowers. If you've seen them, oftentimes they kind of start hanging over because they get so tall. We didn't want that for this yard because again, it's a smaller yard. We wanted things to scale well. So this guy right here, this is gonna max out about half the size of a typical kangaroo paw. So they have them in a bunch of different colors. They're really great. So if you want that look of a kangaroo paw, but you're like, I don't have the space for a big big flowering plant, go with the Bush Ranger series. The last one that we have on this job site that's dwarf is our tiny towers. And these are dwarf Italian cypress. They are so cute. Normally I would plant these in 15 gallons, but we were on a little bit of a budget here, so we went with 5 gallons instead because they are a little bit slower growing, but aren't they just so darn cute? Like, just look at them. So these are gonna grow a little bit every year or so, and they're gonna max out about 12 feet or so. Now there is kind of mixed opinions on this online on how tall these get over time. I've seen up to like 25 feet on some areas, but again, they're very slow growing. So your typical Italian cypress, it's going to reach 60 feet eventually, and they're going to be pretty big, and they're great screens for big properties. Again, this is a smaller property, so we went with the tiny towers, and we expect them to grow, you know, a little bit over time and max out somewhere around here. So hopefully this was helpful. If you have a small yard and you're looking for plants, make sure you look for dwarf plants if you think that fits your scale better. The other thing I wanted to point out though is, especially with citrus, oftentimes people are like, I want the dwarf version. Most often you're gonna find a semi-dwarf version available that's just more popular. So if you're looking for a dwarf lemon or lime, they're usually gonna be ending up in between like the 6 to 12 feet. Like that's the final mature height of the semi-dwarf tree. If you're looking for, at least in citrus, if you're looking for a true dwarf, they're gonna be below 6 feet or so, sometimes only like 3 feet tall max. They're a little bit harder to find because there's not as much of a market for people that want 3 foot tall orange tree. One more thing, we have a dwarf light. Well, it's not really called a dwarf light, but this is a mini beam, and it's one of my favorite lights to use in small scales. It actually puts out a big punch, but because the size of these boulders and the size of these plants, I didn't want to overwhelm it with a normal size uplight. So I have this tiny little guy. This is made all out of brass. It has a little shield here so it can kind of help focus where the light goes. And we're still playing around with this final location, but as you can see, it's so minimal and it really helps with the scale of the garden versus having a big old light here that'd be so obvious. So it's really cool what's available. There's so many different types of plants, and there's so many amazing growers out there with so many different varieties of plants. So I hope this was helpful, and maybe it was way too much information, and if it was, feel free to ask me questions below. I'm happy to answer your questions. And then of course, if you're not subscribing already, please do. Thanks for watching.